Unfortunately, the business is going into administration tomorrow,
Oh my
and
gosh.
no one works here anymore. If you can pop into the office and pick up your stuff, that would be great.
What was your first thought?
Hey, you're really crazy, and the world is about to get incredibly disrupted.
What is the single biggest problem that you're solving?
We think online shopping's broken. There's no other business that we know that is taking this approach on the planet.
How did you find your first investor?
So if you're a startup founder listening to this right now and wondering why you're not getting investment, well, it's because you're a failure because there's loads of money around. Don't take a salary and end up like driving an Uber. None of that really makes sense. Well, if this interview exists on the internet forever, then it's either going to look like an incredibly punchy prediction and I can be pat on the back, or maybe we can delete the YouTube video and we will contact you and buy you that particular pair of sneakers.
Well, that is probably the best Christmas gift. Hi there guys, and welcome back to Founders Hack, a channel where we interview entrepreneurs to learn more about how they build their businesses. But our mission is bigger than just that. If you have a startup idea that you feel passionate about, but you feel stuck in your daily job and you don't know how to make the first step, or you're a first-time founder looking for some practical answers to the questions around product building, distribution, fundraising, watch our interviews to get some extra bit of motivation to pursue your passion and to get some practical advice from the successful entrepreneurs themselves. I'm super excited about today's guest, Thomas J. Vosper, the co-founder and CEO of an e-commerce startup, Aisle3. Thomas started Aisle3 just a year and a half ago, so it's a great opportunity for us to learn all about the early stage challenges and how Thomas and the team managed to get the company off the ground. Watch the interview until the very end. There is a surprise freebie waiting for you there. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thomas, thank you for taking the time to chat to us today.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Founders Hack. First of all, I'd like to start with your background. So tell us a little bit more about what you did before you founded Aisle3.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Thomas Vosper for people watching. I've been in e-commerce for about 14 years. That career started at Amazon back when there was about 6 of us on the marketplace team launching all of the different categories and products that you kind of take for granted. For example, Prime didn't exist when I was at Amazon, or this idea of Amazon delivering the boxes to your door. I think we maybe even had just half a dozen categories.
What was there then?
It was electronics, media, electronics, toys and games,
Books?
sports, books of course, and I think I maybe launched the baby category within my first few months of joining there.
That's awesome.
So over my 14 years, I spent about half of my time at Amazon across all the different products and services that they offered. And then I moved to Tesco to look at creating a marketplace within their general merchandise site, Tesco Direct. Unfortunately, around about the same time, there was a £250 million accounting scandal, which kind of nixed some of their ambitions to take on Amazon in that area. And then I launched a last mile locker delivery company called InPost from Poland into the UK for about a year. Prior to starting R3, I actually had my first experience of working in a startup. I was an employee at a price comparison site which was looking to aggregate product feeds from lots and lots of different retailers in any format and try and serve those up to shoppers in an aggregated price comparison view.
Cool. So then how did you transition from your last employment and working as an employee to founding Aisle3?
Yeah, so a very interesting time, certainly at the start of what has been a very difficult period with the COVID pandemic. I found myself away at a conference in Manchester at about 7:30 in the evening, looking at my phone, getting a group WhatsApp message saying, unfortunately, the business is going into administration tomorrow, and no one works here anymore. If you can pop into the office and pick up your stuff, that would be great. Which was, about 2 weeks before the UK went into its first lockdown. And so you can imagine like an immense kind of personal challenge and dilemma there to have worked, for 3.5 years in a business.
What was your first thought, or like your thought on the way back on the train?
Well, yes, that in itself is quite interesting because I suddenly had that my first thought was, okay, I guess I'm paying for the hotel tonight and my train fare home myself. I don't know quite what I do from here. But actually, I was really inspired by the challenge that we were trying to tackle in a scrappy startup, albeit one that had raised about £4.5 million. And so I had that moment of having to think, well, there's kind of some unfinished business here, because again, when I look at what they were trying to achieve and then what I look at the last 14 years, fundamentally why you should care about that problem that you probably don't even know exists is when you go onto a platform or marketplace, or maybe even look at Google Shopping, what you often see now is in the filters, maybe red is listed 3 times because no one can agree whether it should have a capital R or if it's all in capitals, right? Or you see a bunch of duplicate products. Or maybe you look for a green pair of sneakers and you suddenly see a bunch of white sneakers and lots of duplicates, because what you're being shown is the data that's being provided and who is prepared to pay the most to get your eyeballs onto their listing, not necessarily whether it's the most relevant or not. And so there was that moment very quickly within the few days, and it helped being at a conference. It was basically the last conference before the country went into lockdown, to be able to speak to some of my industry peers and my colleagues who I'd known for years, to say, I think, if I want to tackle this, can I? Am I going to get support? Are people going to help me? And hey, how am I going to actually create a business? How do you take an idea and actually make a proper business?
I think that's a very important point, because I think when you're starting something and you are a first-time founder, you are seeking for this kind of guidance from someone, from your more experienced peers or something. So I guess they said, yeah, go ahead.
Well, they did. I mean, almost every conversation was prefixed with the, hey, you're really crazy and the world is about to get incredibly disrupted. But I was also quite lucky to have, a co-founder that, a really visionary co-founder who I trust incredibly, and I have a huge amount of respect for his ability to run a business and his technical expertise. And I'd been working with him for about 6 months. So we were on...
In the same company.
Yeah, exactly. So we were on a good footing for us, at a similar age, both with families, with 2 young children, with mortgages to pay, suddenly saying, okay, how do we turn this negative into a positive, and what are the steps that need to happen, and how quickly does it need to happen to get us started?
That's very cool. So how much time, how long after your text message did you have this conversation with the co-founder? Was it a week after?
Oh no, within 24 hours.
Within 24 hours?
Within 24 hours, and 5 days after getting that message, we'd actually incorporated R3 in Company's House, and we were ready to go.
That's amazing. I think sometimes you probably need this adrenaline from a big event to actually make this first step. That's really cool. Okay, so speaking about your co-founder, what are the things that people should look for in their co-founders when looking for co-founders?
Yeah, I think it's really important to look for 3 attributes with anyone that you're going to, really with anyone that you're going to work with in business, but it becomes more acute as you look at founding a business. And one of those is that you need to trust the person completely. They also need to bring a set of skills into the business that you can't buy in, and therefore they justify the equity that they then take into the business. And then they need to have a comparable work level to you. And you really need to make sure that the founders, and then as you start to scale up your senior team, find people that fit those 3 attributes.
Okay, awesome. And are there any drawbacks in having a co-founder? Because people talk a lot about the benefits, and these are clear. What are the drawbacks?
Look, I would say that when you look at how you structure a cap table and how much everyone owns in the business, it's a bit like being in a rock and roll band, right? If you're the solo singer, then you get all of the royalties. But actually, having all of the royalties when it equates to nothing, because ultimately you either burn out, tap out, or fall out with someone, it doesn't really work. So you're better to kind of split the gap with someone that's going to help. I guess the other thing of philosophy that I take, both kind of in life and in business, where it doesn't just help with having a co-founder that complements me, but also other people in and around the business. I hear a lot of bad advice where people say that you should like think about your weaknesses and then work on your weaknesses and try and improve. And this, I really don't, I think that's terrible advice. I just see
your strength.
Yeah, it's, you know, the idea that you're 2 out of 10 at something and you might be able to work really hard and get 3 or 4 out of 10, it's pointless. Like focus on all the stuff that's 7 or 8 and become a superstar. You need to acknowledge the weakness, but that's the whole point of having other people around you that can advise you and support you.
That's a great advice. That's a really good advice. So now you mentioned your family, that you have children, you have a mortgage. So what did they say when you told them that you're going to start a company?
I was really lucky. My wife said, you know, all those times where you said you might do something a bit different if you were in charge in all of those other organisations that you've been in. She said, well, you know, like now's the chance to do it, right? Go and do it. How she feels about that, you know, over 12 months later, when I basically work about 18 hours a day, you know, 6 days a week, is probably slightly different.
Okay, but it was super important, I guess, to get the support around you.
Yeah, again, and you know, that's where you have support of family and friends, and we have a supportive family. And we, again, turning those kind of negatives of the situation in lockdown and COVID and actually making that into a positive where, you know, actually a lot of my expenses disappeared overnight.
Yeah, that's true.
Going into a London office, like, disappeared overnight. So sure, like I didn't have an income, but all of the things that I needed the income for, like all of the clubs, all of the events, you know, the idea that we might go out for a family meal once every couple of weeks, something like that, like none of that existed. So it actually meant that I could be super, super frugal at a time when I needed to be super frugal, and everything was helping me do that.
That's good. That's a great story. Okay, so now let's talk about aisle 3 and the business itself. Let's go through like a very short list of simple questions about the business and the idea, just to get everyone up to speed. So what is the single biggest problem that you're solving?
We think online shopping's broken. I find it nuts that you can go onto one single site and book a flight and then book a rental car from that airport to take you to a hotel, and then also have holiday insurance in a matter of moments through one destination. But when you go and try and buy a pair of wireless headphones, you don't see the best, you see what the search engines want to show you, so the biggest advertisers or the guys with the biggest SEO departments. And when you think you find the one that you find is the best, you then end up traipsing across the internet, opening up a whole bunch of different tabs across your browser, checking lots of discount sites, voucher sites, maybe checking with friends and families, and then ending up onto Amazon for product reviews just to see if you're getting the best deal. And it absolutely baffles me. And so, you know, we took the view that, you know, if the whole of the fabric of e-commerce is kind of stitched together by bad product data that is supplied by brands and retailers, what if all of those times you as a shopper, next time you buy a pair of sneakers, say, open up 6 or 7 different tabs across the top of your browser to check if the style and the color you like is available in a size that fits you. What if we built the technology to go and visit those 6 or 7 sites on your behalf, and maybe even find site 8, 9, and 10 that you didn't even know exist because they don't pay Google enough, and then bring all of those into one universal view before you even get to the buy button or delivery, and see all of your options in one place? How powerful would that actually be? And by the way, that's just trainers.
Yeah.
Like that could happen in any single product, in any language, anywhere in the world. And that's our mission, to do that, to do all of that work for the shopper.
Cool. So you're basically solving a problem of product comparison, price comparison, and I guess product discovery as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so much more powerful once you have this almost like a Wikipedia of every product in the world all in one place. How that manifests itself today could quite simply be an app or a website where you can go and transact and find and discover new products, but could that also be a series of message boards? Could that be shopping lists that you can share with friends or family and have them comment, add to, delete from, upvote on?
And I guess at the first stage, what you're doing is that you're not creating a market in another marketplace. So the customer will find the product on your website and then click on the link to go to the marketplace or an e-commerce site that is selling it.
Yeah, there's another really big problem that is happening right now and has been happening over the years, but COVID has really accelerated that. And again, I talk about being lucky to be in the industry that we're in, but actually, like, e-commerce and online shopping over the last 12 to 18 months has boomed across the world. But that growth is largely confined to a smaller and smaller cohort of the very biggest tech platforms and retailers. You know, we recognize that as Amazon, but, you know, other countries would recognize that as Flipkart, they would recognize that as Walmart. And so there are bigger businesses growing off the back of this, and that's really damaging to independent retailers. How that manifests itself is if you think about the last thing that you maybe bought on Amazon, and if you think back to that product, can you remember if it was Amazon that you bought from, or was it a seller? And if it was a seller, in most cases, people don't even identify with that seller. And so that's really damaging for a retailer and a brand.
It's funny, but I actually do check who sells the product, and I prefer to go for Amazon because of the delivery and the standard that they put in. So I know that the standard is so high that I'm going to have the product in 1 or 2 days and it's going to be all fine.
And that in itself is fascinating, because when we look at all of the opportunities in e-commerce and where people are placing their bets in e-commerce, you definitely look at someone like Amazon or JD. What they're trying to do is own the customer with that last mile, with that smooth logistics. You look at other platforms like Shopify that are trying to make it accessible for independent retailers to exist. And then you look at like the buy now, pay laters, or the guys wanting to get on checkout like PayPal or Klarna. And what you find they're doing is they're trying to own that checkout process. Where we feel really passionate at R3 is that no one's actually looking after the shopper or caring for the shopper before the buy button. And that's where we see there's a big space for innovation.
I think that's a really good moment to talk about the customer. So who is your customer? How do you see it?
Well, we're trying to solve the problem for two sides of that value chain. One is that shopper that is used to that really broken experience of having to traipse all across the internet. And the other is the independent retailers that right now have the huge marketplaces eating their lunch and owning their customer and taking their brand equity. We think it's a really symbiotic relationship for us to work closely with those retailers and actually position them in front of the shoppers at the right time to make a purchase.
Cool. And then how would you make money? Would you charge a shopper, or would you take a cut of the retailer's price?
Yeah, so when you look at a marketplace and then a sort of marketplace 2.0, R3, there's really kind of three different levers that you can pull to make revenue. You're right, you could choose to charge the shopper. You could make some transaction value, and you could charge a retailer. And so we think that there's a lot of value on a performance basis to work with retailers. And we've seen that already, even at a effectively pre-launch business. We have over 900 retailers that are signed up on a waiting list to join us on our program. And the test beta clients that have gone live have seen transactions and have actually paid a commission to us off the back of that sale. And so what we target as a business is we look at GMV, so the gross merchandise value of the sales that flow through the platform, to know that we are actually showing the right products to the right shoppers, and they're then completing a transaction because they see value at R3, and then they complete with the retailer.
As you mentioned, you have the idea, you have your co-founder. What was your next step that you took? How did you go about building the first version of the product?
So the first thing that any startup needs to do is think about how they can get capital in the business quickly. And that was particularly acute for us as older founders that had all of a sudden lost all sources of income immediately, and needed to then say, how do we actually fund this and bootstrap this? Because it's very different from taking a year or 3 years around the current job to think and save and plan and think about what your next steps are. We were sort of thrown into it at 5 days' notice. What we did first of all was look at, was there any help that we could get? And were there any grants? Were there any startup foundations? Was there anyone that would be able to support us? And we were very lucky to find Virgin Startup as a program, who have Virgin Startup loans, where you can apply for a personal loan up to about £25,000, which is paid back over a few years. And it's given to you really on the condition that you are able to present a cogent business plan with an idea that does actually solve a problem that they think is going to work with the right team. And so that was really important for us, because whilst it was particularly scary going from redundancy and no income to all of a sudden saying, I'm also going to expound on that problem by taking out a £25,000 loan, it was a loan that actually meant that we were really going through a validation process. And I feel that was very important when we started to then reach out to investors as we started to scale the business and we started to identify where we needed to bring hires in, because it kind of wasn't like a bunch of kids with an idea trying to see if something would work. It was a couple of industry veterans with over 30 years in the industry together who had gone through a program and had our financials and had our deck and had our idea and our business plan validated.
I see. So how much of the product did you have to build before you actually went to external investors?
So when we put our plan together, we looked at probably bringing in about £500,000 worth of investment to the business, which we felt would get us to prove the end-to-end data ingestion and matching, because really as an R&D project, there's no other business that we know that is taking this approach on the planet. We don't know anyone that's doing this right now. So first of all, we had to prove, having spent 14 years working with product feeds and trying to match up products with barcode numbers, can we even prove that we can do that first of all? And so our plan gave us about £500,000 to kind of prove that point, and then spin that out into enough of a website that we could start cutting commercial relationships with retailers and brands, and then also get some traction with shoppers.
So how did you find your first investors?
An awful lot of hard work. Yeah, it's an awful lot of hard work and outreach. And I made so many mistakes in my kind of early outreach to people. And I know this now from sort of changing roles. I'm in a business where I'm now the CEO and a co-founder. I have an incredible amount of unsolicited cold messages across email or on LinkedIn. It's almost unmanageable, actually, LinkedIn at the moment. For me. So the idea that someone would put that they are an angel investor in LinkedIn is bizarre, because there must be literally thousands of people all trying to grab their attention. And I definitely found that I was kind of one of those guys early. You start to kind of talk to everyone that you know. You then start to try and think about who could invest. And it's really dangerous actually to go down that route, because really what we needed to find who are the investors that get the problem, back us as individuals, as a team, and can see that we're credible, and then can support us to keep going to the next level. And so there was a period of reflection through that kind of first outreach where I never kind of listened to some of the warning signs or that kind of horrible moment. And I said this to every founder.
Give me an example, what can be an early warning sign?
Well, it's talking to the wrong people about the wrong things. So approaching the wrong type of investor who's not invested in your area.
I see.
I kind of flipped a lot of my conversations around, so that I would often start an investor conversation with, you must get approached a lot, your time is valuable, and so before I become that founder that's going to see your eyes glaze over whilst I just pitch you for 20 minutes, tell me right now, are you actively investing? Typically, at what stage and at what amount do you invest? What similar investments have you made in this space similar to our business?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
That's
you can pretty
really
much
useful.
get from those 3 questions, is this the right conversation for you guys to be having?
I see. And then, but to even get this 5-minute meeting, to be able to say that, how do you get in touch with all these investors? Or how did you do it when you started? Just connections? Mm-hmm. What about cold calling, like reaching out?
Cold messages, cold calling. Yeah, I was that guy messaging a lot of people on LinkedIn. I tried to reach out to people in the right way, where I took a lot more interest in finding the relevant people. And then you always end up having you always need to leave a conversation as well with, okay, but how else can you help? So if you go back to those 3 questions and someone said, well, I'm not actively investing right now, I don't normally invest in this category anyway, it doesn't hurt to say, okay, you don't need to hear my pitch then, get some time back in your life, we're all busy, but do you know someone that invests in AI, ML tech businesses that is trying to tackle shopping?
Okay, but that's a really important message that I think many people don't know about, is that it's extremely hard to raise this first round, because people talk a lot about the market is hot, there is so much venture money going around there, but to raise this first round, it's still extremely hard.
Mm-hmm. So Bohurst said last year that 348 businesses raised investment for the first time. Mm-hmm. That was down from about 500 the year before and 700 the year before that. So if you believe everything that you see on social media, then everyone's happy, everyone's successful on LinkedIn, everything is going great, and loads of money is being plowed into investments. So if you're a startup founder listening to this right now and wondering why you're not getting investment, well, it's because you're a failure, because there's loads of money around. And that's just not true. The reality is that there is more money about now than ever, but it is getting invested in increasingly later stage businesses. With established teams, founders who've gone through this journey before, maybe had successful exits before, and have gone back to the same investor base. And that is not where you are when you are trying to start completely from scratch and you've not raised money before.
Well, congrats to you then, that you've been through this process.
Sometimes it feels sometimes it feels great. Sometimes it feels like the hardest thing that we've ever done. But again, for startup founders to think about, you need to also try and think about those realistic milestones. Sure, there are certain categories. Right now, the hot topic is get grocery deliveries in 10 minutes, and everyone seems to be piling money into that, and sure, that will get consolidated, and half of them won't even exist in 12 months. That's almost certain. But you see those big numbers and start to wonder why you're not raising 10 million or 20 million, or why you're not a unicorn business. The stats show that hardly anyone will be a unicorn business. And so what you need to think about is, what are your milestones? And so our first goal was to try and raise £500,000. But if I go back to that journey about us as founders and older founders with responsibilities, wanting to grow a team, it was important for us to get money in earlier into the business so that we could at least get started, because we were trying to do something that we just knew someone else hadn't done. And so we broke that round into two separate rounds. And that, that's incredibly time consuming, because as a founder, it takes me out of the business doing a full-time job fundraising, because that's kind of what it is. It actually meant that we could get some investors in early that were strategic investors that could support us, maybe had contacts to be able to help us grow in the areas or support us in the areas we needed additional help and advice. And then start to get those early proof points of, can we start to do this? Can we ingest this information? Can we match it? Can we get commercial relationships? Can we see shoppers come onto a site?
So how much have you raised so far?
So we've raised just under £500,000 right now. And by the way, just mentally for founders, they're probably almost always doing better than they think they are, and most people on LinkedIn are almost certainly doing worse than it looks like that they're doing.
That's a good one. By the way, so when I was prepping for the interview, I watched the TEDx talk that you gave. By the way, guys, check it out. We're gonna leave the link in the description. I highly recommend to check it out. So in this tech talk, one of the thoughts that you kind of touched on was that the founders nowadays are not paid enough sometimes. So first question that I have, what is on average, what is a typical founder salary for someone who raised their first round, like 200K, $500,000?
Mm-hmm. I think every situation is very, very different. I think that there's maybe at an individual private investor level, probably some expectations which have been set from maybe some popular TV programs around just how much £10,000 might get you in a high-tech business, and the expectations that founders maybe should be living in their parents' basement and maybe living off tins of beans. And that's just not realistic. So there's no one number that works. But I definitely found in my conversations with investors that the really smart investors wanted to make sure that me and the team that we were hiring, no one needed to worry about putting food on the table for their families. No one needed to worry about missing a mortgage payment or having to do a bit of freelancing in the evening or drive an Uber in the evening, which happens. And when I talk to other founders, that happens. They expect to try and run a business. They expect to have a 5 million valuation of a business and expect they can raise £1 million, but don't take a salary and end up like driving an Uber. None of that really makes sense. And so I think it's a really good way of like working out just how much of a partnership you have with an investor, because you're of value in the business as a founder and all of your team are as well. And you need to make sure that that team is focused solely on the business. It's the reason we've been able to grow so quickly and develop the technology we have in next to no time, because when you do have people working solely in the business, it's 18 hours a day, 6 days a week, and we will do that.
So now I think it's a good moment to talk about like where you are at now. Where are you at right now? So with the product, with how many people do you employ? How many offices do you have? How many remote offices do you have?
So let's start first talking about the product. So we have a website, it's isle-3.co. Our launch category is trainers. And so you'll find yourself in the run up to Christmas in 2021, you will be able to visit our site and see all of your buying options across all the sneaker retailers in the UK. And so that was for us like a super exciting, groundbreaking move. We're really looking forward to that. We've got really engaged retailer base. We've got the largest selection of sneakers in the UK going live. And so I'd love shoppers to go, it's isle-3.co and have a look and find all the trainers that you want to buy on there. And so I'm really excited about the product, but the team as well has been a incredible experience to scale a team entirely remotely, and doing that has actually given us this wonderful product alongside all of the tech, which again we just don't see anyone else being able to create right now.
So how many people do you employ right now?
So we have about 14 people in the business. Throughout sort of Q3, Q4 2021, we'll scale up to about 20 people. We looked at hiring across the globe when we started the business, and then started to find that we had a cohort of very talented individuals in India. And so that led us to kind of double down our efforts to build the team around them in India. One of the things that we found is that I think many of the traps that startups kind of fall into, particularly in the very early stages, is they look to outsource some of the products or some of the development. And it was really, we felt really passionate that we wanted to own that IP and work directly with people who joined us for our mission. And so it meant as we scaled that team, it was really important for us to actually support them with the security that they would need, and the idea of people dotted around India on consultant contracts into a UK company was probably quite challenging. And so we made the effort to actually create a subsidiary business. So, here we are now. We are a multinational corporation. I'm a director of a business in India. Ironically, we have a hot desk in the UK, but we have an actual office in Ahmedabad in Gujarat in northwest India.
That's super cool. So how did you go about actually finding them?
Well, we actually looked across LinkedIn for developers with the skills that we required, and there were certainly a very specific set of requirements that we had. I've kind of learned over the last few years within e-commerce to always try and find that subject matter expert and try and find that square peg that fits in a square hole. And so we searched all across LinkedIn, and it was a really useful tool, just like we did with trying to find the most relevant investors, and then reached out really to talk about the mission and see if people understood the problem that we think shoppers have. And actually the validation that we got from speaking to, and it wasn't just India initially, like all across the globe when we talked to developers and the technical team that would come in, is that really resonated with them, that shopping problem.
That is really cool. And I really love your approach, both with the developers and the investors, just going on LinkedIn, just using all the filters that LinkedIn allows you to use, right? Buying your, premium subscription, and just reaching out to people. I think that's a really important advice, because there are a lot of people who have an idea, but then they really don't know how to make the first step. They would say, oh, I don't know anyone in this area. How can I find a developer? Well, you just go on LinkedIn, do the filtering, and reach out to people and take it from there.
Yes, but I suppose there's also some other things that are really important around that, is that at that point we also had a very credible business. And so there's loads of people across the planet that have ideas, but what's really important is if either you or someone within your team is actually executing and setting up the business operationally. So by the time we started to hire people into the business, we had a full set of legal documents, we had a business that was registered, we actually had the trademark for R3 as well. We had the early workings of an initial site, which my co-founder could code and develop himself. We had an understanding of the data pipeline and how we would manage that. We had full employee contracts that were relevant and legal, and we had a proper accountant. So we were set up as a business even before we needed to go out and start reaching out to people to join us.
That's another interesting point that I wanted to talk about, is the definition of success. And the question is, what was your definition of success for your startup this year and a half ago when you just started, and how has it changed since then?
So we've always looked at defining success as a series of small milestones. It's a bit like that famous speech about trying to take inches and keep moving forward all the time. And so there's certainly some big blue sky thinking and some big targets where we wanted to prove, can we actually solve this data problem, which we'd never seen anyone do, we'd never seen our previous employer manage or other big trillion-dollar businesses manage. But that actually needs to manifest itself in a much smaller, much more regular series of increments of success for that. And some days, and it is often on a daily basis, some days that is, am I making a good commercial decision here? Are my 2 or 3 decisions that I'm making in the process of the day, are they good decisions? Am I moving the business forward? Am I cutting a good deal somewhere? Am I building a better relationship with one of our investors who's able to support us? A lot of it is quite intangible at this stage, and I think that's also probably a challenge for a lot of startups. If I'm being frank, you can get too focused on the metrics and the numbers, when actually what's really exciting to you and the team is solving the big problem, and are you kind of steering the ship in the right direction to solve that problem all the time?
Yeah. That is a great definition. We just talked a lot about how much various different challenges you have to overcome to get to this stage. And I know it can get emotional when you're trying to get a company off the ground. Did you have any moments when you actually like shed a tear over some IL3 related issue?
Oh, look, absolutely, right. For any founder that is going through an investment process, a startup process, trying to run a team, the startup life, there is really no kind of middle ground on that kind of spectrum of emotions. It is the elation of a significant milestone of moving the business forward, or some validation somewhere that's really super exciting, or those moments where you just kind of sit on the sofa and you feel kind of the world closing in and you have a little cry and you think, I don't know if I can do this. Because actually that's also the bit that's quite exciting, and that's the bit that really excites me about our startup specifically. You know, we are trying to achieve something that we haven't seen other people do, so it's supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be intimidating. It's also kind of supposed to be impossible. You know, we're pitching ourselves into an area where there are trillion-dollar businesses that don't seem to be able to fix this and pay a couple of developers almost the entire amount, over a year, almost the entire amount of money that we're trying to run a team with. So it's supposed to be scary. I know that I signed up for this, and I know the team signed up for this, but it's also okay to admit that even though we did sign up for it, sometimes it's tough, and you probably need to work out when you can kind of get a little bit of distance or a bit of space, or try and switch off, which I know was a real challenge for me personally, and probably almost for most founders. You know, we face realities as startup founders. You know, businesses, startups, 80% of businesses don't make their first year. So you know, when you talk to me about like what does success look like, well, we got through that. You know, like hardly any businesses raise any money. Like 1% of businesses raise money. Well, we did that, and we've done it twice. So sure, there's still an awful lot for us to achieve, and there's significant challenges for us ahead, but they're the little milestones that we see. What
is the next milestone, like the success milestone for you?
For us, we're really passionate about helping shoppers now. We really want shoppers.
Launching the product will be the...
Absolutely. We're really excited that going into a busy Christmas shopping period, that people will engage with the site. They will share with friends and family. They'll start to create those shopping lists. They'll start to engage with the retailers and brands that we work with. And we'll see actually that we were right, that idea and that frustration of opening all those different tabs to try and find that size, when you kind of condense that down into one source of truth, that for us will be really exciting when we see that happen. And so right now we are looking at the next stage of investment for us in the business. I've got very supportive existing investors who will help us get to the next level. We have some really exciting hires that have either signed with us and are like joining imminently, or just about to sign, and we can't wait to get them over the line. Again, like super smart people. We have already about 4 PhDs in the business. We'll probably take our roster by the end of 2021 to about 6 in the business, all subject matter experts solving these problems. So yeah, for me, they're the 2 milestones really, like really growing that team with experts that can expand on our product offering to shoppers, and then seeing how shoppers engage with R3.
Awesome. So on that point, if our viewers get excited about the problem that you're solving, how can they find jobs that you're looking for to fill? Or are you hiring now, and where can they go? Yeah,
so I think, you know, as a fast growth startup, as the world is a lot smaller for us now, we are looking to hire. We can hire anywhere across the planet. If you're particularly excited by the challenge that we have, and you have relevant experience in e-commerce, machine learning, or AI, particularly around product matching, then you can message us at careers@isle-3.co.
So now, the last couple of questions before we go into the fire round. What is your vision for the company in 1 year And then in 5 years' time.
1 year we hope to be the destination for
Yeah.
sneakers in the UK. We will have a very robust team that will continue to scale, and I look at how long it takes, and we've looked at a lot of research around how long it takes as a business to get to a unicorn status, for example, which and we take that judgment as $1 billion. Within 5 years, we should be comfortably hitting that.
Okay, well, that's very ambitious but very exciting target.
Well, if this interview exists on the internet forever, then it's either going to look like an incredibly punchy prediction and I can be patted on the back, or maybe we can delete the YouTube video.
No, I will take a snippet and remind you on LinkedIn.
Yes, well, see what my situation is in 5 years before you remind me of this prediction.
Okay, we can agree on that. Okay, a quick fire round. 3 books that help you in building Aisle 3.
Books that help me build R3 are books that help me elsewhere in my life. I love the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, Stephen Covey. I think that's an incredible book to read. I also instill a culture in our business of having a growth mindset, and so an important read for anyone is looking at Carol Dweck's book on a growth mindset. I don't think you need to really see much past those 2 as personal development books, because they're highly relevant to culture and building a team.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I haven't read any of these 2. They will be on my
essential
reading
reads.
list.
I think what's particularly important is both of them, they're not particularly new books, and certainly 7 Habits of Highly Successful People is a book that's probably 40 years old now, and yet it's still super relevant.
Cool.
If you want a really good personal story of a founder, the Ray Kroc book, which was written again 40 years ago for McDonald's, is a really interesting story of a founder who started a lot later in life.
Yes.
And so I could definitely resonate with that as he grew his business.
Cool, thank you. Yeah. And then what was your most stressful day at Aisle 3 so far?
So I think one of the things that really stresses me out as a founder is kind of that context switching that you have to do all of the time, and that as a founder is something that I really try, not just for myself but also for the team, to try and avoid, because it makes everything that you do slightly less efficient. And I think one of my biggest challenges was going through the process of incorporating our business in India on top of everything else that I was doing around the business. We took a decision to incorporate a business in India because of growing the team there. But I don't think that I'd completely anticipated the level of paperwork and stress that it would take. And again, if you look at the tip of the iceberg is we're a multinational corporation after not much more than 12 months of existence. We have a physical office in another country that the last time I went there was 15 years ago. And we have a great team who are all on proper full-time contracts, and we pay taxes into India to have them as full-time employees. But what that actually looks like as a founder to do that is going to a solicitor to have 18 different documents signed and notarized and then bound and then taken to the Foreign Office and then sent to India in the midst of a pandemic. And there was a moment when I found myself kind of standing at the post office with this envelope of documents that had collectively cost me about £2,000 to have all of this legal process, and hand that to the counter and say, it will get to India. Should I be insuring this? No, you can't insure it, because then when people see that it's valuable, it will probably get held up and questioned. So you're better to just send it.
Leave it to the destiny.
And so there's 4 days where I'm seeing this little package land in Paris and then check over Europe and then come into Vadodara, which is about, it's fairly close to where our office is in Ahmedabad, close in Indian terms. It's about 2.5 hour drive, so that's pretty local. yeah, that was probably about the most stressful that I can imagine.
No, that's a good answer. What's funny about it is that the stressful moments, we can laugh about it now. So now it's a funny story to tell, but not in the moment, probably. Okay, and then the last one. What is your best day at aisle 3?
My best times are when I join our weekly tech all hands and I hear like an incredible co-founder walk through what we've achieved over the last week and what's happening in the next week and where we're going from then. And seeing all of those different faces that I've never had the chance to kind of see in person, all intently joining in and celebrating all of our success. That for me is a truly wonderful experience, having been 18 months ago with zip, with nothing, with no business, and now having an entire team who really understand the problem, really understand how we can scale, and work incredibly hard to make sure that we can achieve that as a business.
Amazing. Awesome. I don't think there is a better way to finish the official part of the interview. Thank you. Well, now, guys, it's a freebie time. Thomas has a special surprise giveaway for all the viewers. So what did you have in mind?
Well, we're passionate about making sure shoppers can find the right pair of sneakers for them in a size that fits and make sure they get the best deal. So by the time this interview is out, we will have our new site launched and ready for shoppers to engage with. So we would love you to go on to aisle 3. We'd like you to try and find the perfect pair of sneakers for you. Bear in mind that we are a startup, so try and find the perfect pair for under £150. And if you find that particular pair of trainers, then please send the link of the page on aisle 3 where those trainers are to hi@aisle-3.co, and at random once a week, for 4 weeks during the run up to Christmas, we will pull out someone's name and we will contact you and buy you that particular pair of sneakers.
Well, that is probably the best Christmas gift you can imagine. Thank you, Thomas, so much for your time and for being honest, and it is amazing story that you have. Good luck with your next milestones. And again, thanks for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Yeah, we can shake hands as well.